My name's Donna Marksman. I'm 71 years old and I'm the author of See You Later, Darling and its sequel, Later, Darling. Shameful. Obviously, you'll realise that the 60s were a completely different era to now. What's now called a love child was a bastard in those days, and it was a terrible thing to have and to be, even in the 60s, although obviously it got better after the 60s. It wasn't too bad for my children, but how it happened was I was 16 years old and in a relationship with a lad from school who was nothing but a little liar. He told me, first of all, that you can't get pregnant the first time you do it, and secondly, if you do it standing up, you definitely won't get pregnant. He was wrong on both counts. He ran away after we found out I was pregnant. My parents disowned me. My sisters weren't allowed to speak to me, so I was on my own. I carried on working right to the end of my pregnancy, and then in those days they had what they called mother and baby homes, which were absolutely appalling in the main. Any unmarried mother was expected to give away the child for adoption, whether they wanted to or not. They weren't counselled. They were told that that was the best thing for the child, and certainly as you were a naughty person, you had to do it. That was your punishment. So I was put into this place in Oxford, in Clark Row. It's now been disbanded, of course. And my first child was my daughter Tracy, who's now in her 50s. And she was born with cerebral palsy with a cord around her neck, so was obviously distressed and obviously going to be handicapped. So they told me that she was going to be taken off me anyway. They knew that there was going to be something wrong with this child. So when they decided to take away the child, you have them for 6 weeks because you're supposed to bond with this child that you've got to give away. It was the most cruel regime you can imagine, and it was all done in the name of social services. So just before, I had some really good friends. I had an enormous Irish family, a load of crooks, but they were amazingly kind to me. And they said to me, that can't happen, we'll get you out of here. Now, I've got an inherent fear of heights. I don't even go upstairs on a bus. And this thing is an old building, and right at the top of this fire escape was where they kept the naughty girls. So they came in the night and we escaped down the fire escape. And they never saw us again. Social services didn't even bother to look for us. And they helped me, the Irish family, for the first few months. And then I should have told you, the reason I went to stay with the Irish family, or one of them, was the wife had run off with another man and somebody was needed to look after the kids. Well, I was ideal for that. But then she came back. So, of course, nicely, I was out of a job. So they got me a job with an RAF officer, and I was supposed to look after his children and him with my child. His wife had run off with somebody else. And he, after about 7 or 8 weeks, decided I was going to become his second conquest because I was a bad girl. I already had a child, so there would be no question. Well, I did question it and I refused. And he then raped me and I got pregnant with my son Robert. I left the family, the RAF family, long before my son was born. I just found out I was pregnant. It was about 3 months afterwards. I went back to the Irish family, and one of them took me down to the council in Oxford, and they rehoused me, my daughter, and obviously I was pregnant with my son. Can I just say what doesn't matter to me? What doesn't matter to me is people's aspirations. They always want the bigger house, the better job, kids at private school. And I'm not saying everybody shouldn't have all that. But what I do say is if everybody tried to help others as much as they could if they're able, then we would have a lot of help for people, especially my people on the streets. But what I will say about what matters to me is my family, my friends, especially proper friends. The friends who are there when you make a mistake, because all of us make mistakes, but the biggest mistake you will ever make is not to learn from what's happened and move on. But that's life, and that's what matters to me.